1. Introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable. Wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXZVA November 30th, 2025 Balcony solar legal in Utah, and soon in New York and Pennsylvania. In episode 57DHXZVA1, what was the mortality rate for smallpox inoculation during the American Revolutionary War? 2. What was the mortality rate after COVID-19 vaccination in the United States? 3. Is an mRNA vaccine for smallpox possible? The evolution of vaccines from smallpox to mRNA. 4. California Marin County RAWSEP View motos with throttles caused worse outcomes from crashes than conventional e-bikes. Those with circumvented speed controllers on the throttle resemble motorcycles. 4. California Zillow removes climate risk scores from home listings. RAWSEP View climate risk scores included scores for bad air quality. 5. Georgia Hogansville RAWSEP View. Democrats gain votes for the utility board because data centers seem to harm affordability of electricity. From the article headline, The New Price of Eggs, the Political Shocks of Data Centers and Electric Bills. Democrats zeroed in on utilities and affordability to win Republican support in upset elections in Georgia and Virginia. 5. Utah and New York and Pennsylvania in the United States. RAWSEP View. Balcony solar is already widespread in countries like Germany and Australia. U.S. balcony solar allowed in Utah. Now balcony solar will be allowed after legislation passes in New York and Pennsylvania. Vermont, Maryland, and New Hampshire are set to follow suit soon. From the article headline, Power surge law changes could soon bring balcony solar to millions across U.S. Tweaks to state laws mean many Americans will be able to benefit from small, simple plug-in solar panels. 6. Massachusetts Boston RAWSEP View. The oath of a physician to do no harm extends to offering the best medical care, even if it is refused. From the article headline, Opinion, the medical case that still haunts me. 7. India RAWSEP View Delhi has air pollution. One source of the PM 2.5 and CO2 air pollution is from crop burning. Farmers have been asked and have been made aware of the air pollution from crop burning. There are clean and cheap alternatives to crop burning, just as there are clean and cheap alternatives to another similar type of air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. From the article headline, India is a rising power, but its capital is a lethal gas chamber, with little being done to clean the skies over New Delhi. The huge city struggles with its toxic air. 8 and 9 headlines. Main content. 1. What was the mortality rate after smallpox inoculation during the American Revolutionary War? RAWSEP View AI overview. About 2% during the American Revolutionary War. The mortality rate for smallpox was approximately 30% for those who naturally contracted the disease. However, the inoculation program implemented by George Washington significantly reduced the mortality rate to about 2% among the Continental Army troops, which helped protect the Army from the devastating effects of smallpox. 2. What was the mortality rate after COVID-19 vaccination in the United States? Executive Summary. RAWSEP View AI overview. Data from national and international public health bodies show COVID-19 vaccines reduce severe outcomes and deaths, especially in older adults. ASIP CDC presentations found that 2024 to 25 vaccines reduced the risk of hospitalization and critical illness in adults aged 65 and older, and who continues to say vaccination remains a key intervention for preventing severe disease and death, particularly for at-risk groups. U.S. mortality statistics also reflect large declines in COVID-19 deaths between 2022 and 2023, from 186,552 to 49,932 deaths, a 73.2% fall, for which decreased COVID mortality is cited as a major driver from Factually website. 3. Is an mRNA vaccine for smallpox possible? The evolution of vaccines from smallpox to mRNA. RAWSEP View AI overview. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Mediloquy blog. January 7, 2025. Vaccination began in the late 1700s when Edward Jenner developed the first smallpox vaccine using the cowpox virus. This pioneering work laid the groundwork for immunization by introducing a safer variant of the disease to stimulate an immune response. Though there was a sizable number of people who perished from the smallpox vaccine, it overall still succeeded in lowering the risk for individuals. As the 1800s and 1900s progressed, scientists developed vaccines for other diseases such as rabies, diphtheria, and polio. The introduction of inactivated and attenuated virus vaccines marked a significant advancement, allowing for safer and more effective immunizations with exponentially lower death rates and probability of other risks. But in general, the varied success of all these vaccines led to the near eradication of smallpox and a drastic decline in diseases like polio. In the 2100s, we witnessed a groundbreaking shift with the emergence of mRNA vaccines. Unlike what we had seen before, mRNA vaccines, such as those developed for COVID-19, use synthetic genetic material to instruct cells to produce a harmless piece of the virus, prompting an immune response. Nowadays, this allows for the potential to adapt to emerging viral threats very quickly. 4. California Marin County RAWSEP View motos with throttles caused worse outcomes from crashes than conventional e-bikes. Those with circumvented speed controllers on the throttle resemble motorcycles. From the article headline, The shocking crash that led one county to reckon with the dangers of e-bikes. Unregulated e-bikes are a growing danger on American streets. In one Bay Area town, a terrible accident finally led to reform. Photo of a high school student on a high-powered electric vehicle known as an e-moto near Tamalpay High School in Mill Valley, California. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, November 30th, 2025. In September 2023, a teenage girl was 15 and beginning her sophomore year at high school in eastern Marin County, California, an honor student who did well at science and aspired to work for NASA. She often rode her bike to school. Both of her parents have histories as cyclists. He grew up riding to school in San Francisco, and she commuted to her job on her bicycle across the Golden Gate Bridge. The mother says, "I wanted them to get exercise, so the bike of the girl did not have a motor." In the wake of the pandemic, electric bicycles were proliferating. Many of the classmates of the teenage girl had gotten e-bikes, or faster machines now known as E-motos. The teenage girl without a helmet got on the e-moto bike behind someone and rode up and down the street. The bike toppled over. The eyes of the teenage girl were open, but they had rolled back and blood was coming out of her ears at the time. The county public health department did not distinguish e-bike crashes from those involving conventional bicycles, but Marin Health maintains a database of trauma cases, so a 57-year-old surgeon began talking with the medical director of Trauma Services. The medical director was compiling numbers on injuries associated with e-bikes as the pandemic continued. The number of e-bike accidents increased in 2022. Over 1 million e-bikes were sold in the United States, up from 287,000 in 2019, and e-bike injuries were far more serious than those sustained on conventional bikes. They were more like what is seen in motorcycle crashes. A pelvic fracture, for example, was uncommon on a pedal bicycle, only about 6% of conventional cycling injuries for e-bike crashes, though it was 25%. The most alarming difference was the fatality rate on a pedal bike. The chance of dying from an injury is about 0.3%. Alfrey says on an e-bike the data indicated it was 11%. A retired trial lawyer bicycles several days a week on Mount Tamalpais in Marin County, the reputed birthplace of mountain biking, until a few years ago he pedaled an analog bike, but as he approached his 70s he felt increasingly limited, riding shorter and shorter distances over the same routes every day. Then a friend started regaling him with stories about how far he could ride on his e-bike, so I took his for a test ride and never looked back. He says now a lean and energetic 77 and some fellow senior cyclists formed a non-profit organization called E-Bike Access to advocate electric mountain bikes on Mount Tam. The retired lawyer says that many of the arguments against e-mountain bikes are the same ones originally used against conventional bicycles, that they cause erosion and scare wildlife and hikers, but then they will usually say e-bikes are even worse. And even if you just allow the legitimate Class 1 ones, the next wave is going to be kids on their throttle devices. By throttle devices, he is referring to Class 2 machines, which have captured an estimated 2/3 of the e-bike market according to People for Bikes. The rationale in 2015 for creating a class for bikes with throttles, which can eliminate even the modest exercise benefits of pedal assistance, was that many e-bikes already had them, and the trade organization did not want to exclude those products and companies. But it may be inappropriate to consider these vehicles to be bikes. At all, the essence of bicycling is pedaling. Middlestad says a machine propelled by a motorcycle throttle just should not be considered a bicycle. It can go from 0 to 20 faster than a regular bike without any exertion at all. As a volunteer for Safe Routes to School, he inventoried the classes and brands of bicycles and e-bikes at 12 local campuses in Marin County. He found that while a majority were conventional bikes, among electric devices those with throttles were by far the most popular, and that most of them had motors capable of going faster than 20 miles per hour to conform with federal law. Class 2 e-bikes have speed controllers that keep users under the limit, but these can be circumvented by magnets, dongles, third-party apps, tuning kits, wire clippers, or even software provided by the manufacturer. Unlocking modifications, popularly called jailbreaking, you do it by pushing a button or two or entering a code on the display. Middlestad says it is as easy as changing a setting on your iPhone. After missing her sophomore year of high school, the teenage girl who fell from an e-bike was back in school in the fall of 2024 and is now a senior planning to go to college. 2 more California laws now prohibit the sale of apps that modify e-bikes to increase their speed beyond the legal limit, as well as the sale of devices that enable such modification. As a result, the Super 73 website now states that customers who downloaded the Super 73 app after January 1st, 2025 would not be able to modify its bikes beyond the Class 2 mode in which they are sold, but a customer service representative for the company acknowledged by email that the motor itself is capable of higher speeds in other configurations. The Marin law went into effect at varying points around the county this summer, and after grace periods, jurisdictions have begun enforcing it, but only after riders have been stopped for another infraction, like running a red light. The police are not supposed to stop anyone based on appearance, for example, their apparent age. Moreover, during a recent municipal meeting, one officer explained that when they try to pull juveniles over, the kids often flee, evading pursuing police cars via narrow trails and sidewalks. But he also noted that, in one case at least, the parents of a child who was injured while riding an e-moto were cited for allowing an unlicensed juvenile to operate a motorcycle. In any case, the new law does not seem to have diminished enthusiasm for what in some cases are illegal bikes. This September at Redwood High School, where he counted 31 e-motos in April 2024, he now counted 48 e-motos. 4 California Zillow removes climate risk scores from home listings. RAWSEP View climate risk scores included scores for bad air quality. From the article headline, the scores aim to predict the risk to a property from fires, floods, and storms, but some in the real estate industry, as well as homeowners, have called them inaccurate excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, November 30th, 2025. Zillow, the largest real estate listing site in the country, has quietly removed a feature that showed the risks from extreme weather for more than 1 million home sale listings on its site. The website began publishing climate risk ratings last year using data from the risk modeling company First Street. The scores aim to quantify the risk to each home from floods, wildfires, wind, extreme heat, and poor air quality. But real estate agents complained they hurt sales. Some homeowners protested the scores and found there was no way to challenge the ratings. Earlier this month, Zillow stopped displaying the scores after complaints from the California Regional Multiple Listing Service, which operates a private database funded by real estate brokers and agents. Zillow relies on that listing service and others around the country for its real estate data. The California Listing Service, one of the largest in the country, raised concerns about the accuracy of the First Street flood risk model. Zillow does not or did not allow sellers to remove climate risk data upon request. Its competitors Redfin and Realtor.com do. 5 Georgia Hogansville RAWSEP View Democrats gain votes for the utility board because data centers seem to harm affordability of electricity. From the article headline, The New Price of Eggs, the Political Shocks of Data Centers and Electric Bills. Democrats zeroed in on utilities and affordability to win Republican support in upset elections in Georgia and Virginia. RAWSEP View, the Georgia Public Service Commission, which is considered a utility board, now has 2 Democratic members and 3 Republican members. From the article headline, Can the same playbook work in 2026? Some residents in Hogansville, Georgia worry a data center may soon be built near their town, further raising energy costs. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, November 30th, 2025. As loyal Republicans, a man said that he and his family of cattle ranchers in Hogansville, Georgia, had one thing on their minds when they cast their ballots. In November, for the Georgia Utility Board to make a statement, they were already irked by their escalating electric bills, not to mention an extra $50 a month levied by their local utility to cover a new nuclear power plant more than 200 miles away. But after they heard a data center might be built next to their ranch about 60 miles southwest of Atlanta, they had enough of Republicans who seemed far too receptive to the interests of the booming artificial intelligence industry. That is the first time I ever voted Democrat, the 58-year-old man said, message sent in some of the reddest and most rural counties of Georgia. Republicans crossed party lines this month and helped propel two Democrats, Peter Hubbard and Alicia Johnson, to landslide upsets, ousting the incumbent candidates on the Georgia Public Service Commission. No Democrat has served on the 5-person commission which regulates utilities and helps set climate and energy policy since 2007 across the country. Democrats have seized on rising anxiety over electricity costs and data centers in what could be a template for the 2026 midterm elections. In Virginia, Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger pledged during her campaign to lower energy bills and make data centers pay more. In the House of Delegates, one Democratic challenger unseated a Republican incumbent by focusing on curbing the proliferation of data centers in Loudoun County. And in the exurbs of Washington, D.C. and New Jersey, Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill promised to declare a state of emergency on utility costs and freeze rates. And in Memphis, Tennessee, State Representative Justin J. Pearson, who is challenging Representative Steve Cohen in a high-profile Democratic primary next year, has vowed to fight a supercomputer by the Elon Musk artificial intelligence company XAI that would be located in a predominantly black neighborhood. Strong opposition by citizens forced the Tucson, Arizona City Council in August to pull the plug on an Amazon data center slated for that Arizona city, and then in September forced Google to call off one in Indianapolis, Indiana. Electricity is the new price of eggs, said the executive director of Powerlines, a nonpartisan organization which aims to modernize utility regulations and reduce power bills. This is a defining moment for politicians of all stripes. What is your answer to lowering utility bills? Because I think consumers and voters are looking for leadership on this. After meeting recently with Virginia legislators, the executive director of Powerlines said he was struck by how the nexus of data centers and utility bills actually came up very consistently. In 2022, a spike in natural gas prices following the Russian invasion of Ukraine fueled a rise in energy costs around the U.S. Utilities have also undertaken costly projects to modernize the power grid and improve the infrastructure to guard against extreme weather and absorb an anticipated surge in demand from data centers. As the price of electricity has risen, more American customers have fallen behind on their utility bills or have had their power cut off. Georgia ranks 35th in energy affordability, in part because of cost overruns and delays associated with its new plant Vogtle nuclear generators in Waynesboro, according to the American Legislative Exchange Council, an influential conservative policy group. So it was not a surprise when Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, candidates in the Republican primary to succeed term-limited Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, called the November 2025 results a referendum on affordability. Some Georgia Republicans have cautioned against reading too much into the 25 percentage point losses suffered by the two Republican utility board incumbents who lost the November 2025 election, stemmed from a 2020 federal lawsuit which contended that the statewide elections for commission seats, which represent geographic districts, were unfair to black voters. An appeals court eventually ruled against the plaintiffs, but the legal battle delayed the elections, setting the stage for the November 2nd races, the only statewide ones this year. 2 more utility seats will be contested in 2026. Democratic turnout was also boosted, Republicans said, by municipal elections in strongholds like Atlanta. One plaintiff in the lawsuit was the woman executive director of Georgia Conservation Voters. She said the lawsuit enabled advocacy groups to develop a plan to help people connect the dots between the bills they were receiving and the role of the commission in approving 6 rate increases for Georgia Power, the largest electric provider in the state. Over the last 2 years, the Political Action Fund of the Georgia Conservation Voters spent $2.3 million sending $500,000 texts, plastering 92 billboards across the state, and producing an anti-incumbent website. That outreach made a difference, she said, pointing to Lowndes and Brooks counties on the Florida border. In previous races for federal and state offices going back to 2018, including the Public Service Commission, Republicans won there by 20 points. This year, the Republican incumbents each lost by 20 points at a weekly food pantry run by South Street Care House in Valdosta, Georgia, where dozens of cars had lined up to receive a box full of fresh fruits, vegetables, breads, and other staples. Several people said they had heard about the election through texts and social media. Rising electricity bills are squeezing the monthly budgets of residents. A 66-year-old Georgia woman is typically a reliable Republican, but not this time. If the power companies want to expand their business, then that should be on them, not the consumer. Some people are just barely making it as it is. Other Republicans in Lowndes County bucked the party. They said, my electric bills keep going up and Republicans control the Public Service Commission, and I've got a problem with that. Data centers have been a prominent issue in the rural exurbs of Atlanta. Trump wants to accelerate data center growth in the battle for AI supremacy. At least 26 are under construction within 60 miles of Atlanta, and another 52 are planned, but some Georgia Republicans, including Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is resigning her seat in January, have questioned the use of resources of data centers. Some residents say local wells have been damaged, and the cost of municipal water has climbed. Good Jobs First, a liberal group that tracks tax breaks for corporations, has said the state has done a poor job disclosing subsidies for data centers. The staff of the Public Service Commission have also warned that monthly residential bills could climb by $20 a month or more, a figure disputed by the utility if the commission approves the Georgia Power proposal to add almost 10,000 megawatts of power to accommodate data centers, the equivalent of 9 nuclear reactors, at Plant Vogtle in Troup County on the Alabama border. The victorious Democratic utility candidates whittled 24-point romps enjoyed by the Republican candidates in 2020 and 2018 down to 10 thanks to former Republican voters, a Republican couple stressed that they did not mind data centers as long as they were placed in industrial areas and the public had input. But in nearby LaGrange, Georgia, the man noted residents were blindsided by an $8 billion project now under construction. So when a Democratic candidate for Congress recently posted on the Troup County Anti-Data Center Coalition Facebook page pledging to be an ally in this fight, the former Republican voter urged her to attend an upcoming Hogansville forum on the issue. Also attending the council meeting was a 56-year-old who owns an auto repair business a half-mile down the road from the ranch. During a tour of the data center footprint in his truck, the 56-year-old described himself and his wife, aged 58, as common-sense conservatives who treasure rural rhythms. I want to hear the crickets when I go to bed, not the hum of a fan up the road, when voting for the utility races started. On October 14th, she automatically chose the Republicans, then she and her husband learned about the data center. We probably voted wrong, she said. 5 Utah and New York and Pennsylvania in the United States. RAWSEP View balcony solar is already widespread in countries like Germany and Australia. U.S. balcony solar allowed in Utah. Now balcony solar will be allowed after legislation passes in New York and Pennsylvania. Vermont, Maryland, and New Hampshire are set to follow suit soon. From the article headline, power surge law changes could soon bring balcony solar to millions across U.S. Tweaks to state laws mean many Americans will be able to benefit from small, simple plug-in solar panels. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, November 20th, 2025. Acquiring solar panels at home can be an expensive hassle for people in the U.S., but small, simple plug-in solar panels for use on balconies are soon to become available for millions of Americans, with advocates hoping the technology will quickly go mainstream. Earlier this year, Utah became the first state in the country to pass legislation allowing people to purchase and install small portable solar panels that plug into a standard wall socket when attached outside to the balcony or patio of a dwelling. Such panels can provide enough power for residents to run free of charge home appliances such as fridges, dishwashers, washing machines, and Wi-Fi without spending money on electricity from the grid. Balcony solar panels are now widespread in countries such as Germany, where more than 1 million homes have them, but have until now been stymied in the U.S. by state regulations. This is set to change, with lawmakers in New York and Pennsylvania filing bills to join Utah in adopting permission for the panels, with Vermont, Maryland, and New Hampshire set to follow suit. Soon a colorful house with solar panels on the roof and a Trump banner, the climate solution both the right and the left can get behind. Read more. Plug-in solar is a powerful tool to deliver enhanced energy independence and affordability to millions of New Yorkers who are currently shut out of the solar economy, said a woman New York State senator who has sponsored a bill to allow balcony solar. She said that her tweak to state law will be a game changer for renters, low-income New Yorkers, and many others who cannot install rooftop solar. Further, 5 states could join the rush in the next few months, according to the executive director of BrightSaver, a nonprofit that champions the adoption of balcony solar panels. As with solar panels that are attached to the roof of a building or arrayed in fields, balcony solar soaks up the sun, albeit on a smaller scale. It then feeds this clean energy via an inverter into the wall socket. The panels themselves are smaller than standard rooftop panels and can be zip-tied in place without professional installation. They sell for the equivalent of about $300 in Germany, with more expensive versions for $1,500 and upwards that include some battery storage that can continue to feed in solar power to the home once the sun has vanished for the day. All of this power is sufficient to run most home appliances for free, although it is not enough for larger family homes that have substantial air conditioning units or require charging for an electric vehicle. If you are a single person living at home, it can power all of your needs, but not for a family of 6, where it could maybe knock 5% off emissions. A major barrier to balcony solar, though, has been the regulatory system across states, which typically requires anyone who installs solar panels to strike an agreement with the local utility for the power they are feeding back to the grid. The installation of panels also typically has to be done by contractors and is inspected. This regime, plus inconsistent federal and state incentives for solar, means that only about 7% of U.S. homes have rooftop solar, far less than some other countries. In Australia, for example, more than 1 in 3 households have rooftop solar. In Utah, a state legislator was intrigued after reading about balcony solar and realized a minor adjustment to the law would allow Utahns to purchase the technology. His legislation carved out an exemption from interconnection agreements for people generating 1.2 kilowatt of power or less. The state law said that if you put any power back on the grid, even 1 electron, you need a contract with the utility, which is just crazy, said the man who is a Republican. No one opposed to change. I fully expect 10 other legislatures in 2026 will run a bill like this, and more people will become interested in this. It will definitely happen. The pro-fossil fuel Trump administration has sought to squash certain solar and wind projects, while some utilities in the U.S. have made it difficult for residents to adopt solar due to fears it could cut into their profits. 6 Massachusetts Boston RAWSEP View. The oath of a physician to do no harm extends to offering the best medical care, even if it is refused. From the article headline, Opinion, the medical case that still haunts me. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, November 30th, 2025. One night a few years ago, I watched a young man die over the course of 12 long hours because he refused a relatively common and safe medical intervention. I remember he was in his 30s and had come into the hospital a few days before with burns on his chest from collapsing onto a hot stove in his kitchen. The doctors in the emergency department realized why he had fallen. His heart rate was dangerously low, though he had been relatively healthy until this point. He had an autoimmune disease that had caused the electrical signals of the heart to become blocked. A pacemaker can solve the problem. Without one, it can be fatal, but he did not want a pacemaker. His doctors called the psychiatrist to come see him, as we do when people are making decisions that do not make sense to us. He articulated to everyone who asked that although he did not want to die, he would prefer death to the potential complications of a pacemaker, especially the possibility of infection. Importantly, the psychiatrists also unearthed a history of refusing medical interventions. Each time a new doctor challenged the decision of the patient, he grew angrier and more withdrawn. When his heart rate dropped even further, he was transferred to the intensive care unit where I work, and it became my turn to try to convince him if I could not change the mind of my patient, then he would die. He might not even make it through the night. A cardiologist spent hours at his bedside trying to get to know him, trying to find some opening that would persuade him to rethink things. He had a wife once, but they were estranged. We kept him from eating in case he ended up agreeing to an emergency procedure to place a pacemaker. The sun was rising by the time the cardiologist left the room, this time with a smile. He was close. My patient wanted a little more time to think, and we could be hopeful, but just after my shift ended, the team asked him again about a pacemaker. He said no. His heart slowed and then stopped completely. He gasped. Someone ran to get the code card, but he had said he did not want to be resuscitated. They managed to give morphine just before he died. We can consider how the many touch points people have with medicine throughout the course of their lives shape their views and ultimately their trust in us. 7. India RAWSEP View Delhi has air pollution. One source of the PM 2.5 and CO2 air pollution is from crop burning. Farmers have been asked and have been made aware of the air pollution from crop burning. There are clean and cheap alternatives to crop burning, just as there are clean and cheap alternatives to another similar type of air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. From the article headline, India is a rising power, but its capital is a lethal gas chamber with little being done to clean the skies over New Delhi. The huge city struggles with its toxic air. Reporters spend a day on the streets of New Delhi from before dawn to midnight measuring the air pollution of the city. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission. Particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, November 30th, 2025. New Delhi wakes up to toxic smog and goes to sleep in the same harmful conditions in the hours between. The 30 million residents of the capital region of India trudge along with chronic headaches and itchy eyes, symptoms of the failure of this rising superpower to provide its people with the most basic need, breathable air. Experts at the top research hospital of the nation call the air severe and life-threatening. The level of toxic pollutants from cars, factories, and crop waste burning by farmers has been as many as 20 times above recommended levels for safe breathing. The problem persists in New Delhi, even while other once polluted capitals like Beijing have succeeded in cleaning their skies this past week, as the air grew so hazardous that the government was forced to order half of its workers to work from home. Journalists traveled around the city from the pre-dawn hours to midnight to chronicle the struggle with bad air. A daily PM 2.5 level, a measure of the most harmful particulates of 15 micrograms per cubic meter, is the standard for safe breathing. We used an air quality monitor to take our own measurements of the PM 2.5 at key spots, which we cross-checked against official data. What we found was a city with no escape from severely toxic air and a population resigned to a public health emergency as its everyday reality. At 6 a.m. at India Gate, PM 2.5 20 times above World Health Organization WHO daily safe level was measured not far away. A 72-year-old man was out for his hour-long morning walk in a public park. For older residents like him, the winter when pollution is at its worst brings the same dilemma every year: to stay home and miss health-affirming exercise, or to stretch their legs outside at the cost of their lungs. At 8 p.m. at Anand Vihar bus station, PM 2.5 at 18 times above WHO daily safe level was measured. A 31-year-old man makes a living at one of the busiest bus stations in Delhi by working at a food stall. He opens his tea stall at 4 a.m. and goes home at 10 p.m. On most days, he earns $5 to $6. My eyes burn all the time. Some days I get tired very early, he said, trying to suppress a frequent cough. He said he wanted to save a bit and go back to his village. He and his wife dread every winter because their children 6 and 8 fall ill frequently. It will not work out here, he said. Every year it is the same. 8 headlines. The New York Times, November 30th, 2025. Affordability. RAWSEP View the price of eggs compared to the price of data centers. The article headline: the political price shock of data centers and electric bills. The New York Times. Clean energy e-bikes are surging in popularity. What will it take to rein them in? The New York Times. Colorado Democrat Faith Winter, Colorado state senator, is killed in car crash. The New York Times. Honduras, the ex-president whom Trump plans to pardon flooded America with cocaine. The New York Times. Honduras in announcing pardon of drug trafficker while threatening Venezuela. Trump displays contradictions. The New York Times. Housing climate change ignored. Zillow removes climate risk scores from home listings. The New York Times. India RAWSEP View air pollution with PM 2.5 from the article headline: India is a rising power, but its capital Delhi is a lethal gas chamber. The New York Times. Medicine and science. RAWSEP View young patient chooses not to get a pacemaker due to fear of infection. From the article headline: Opinion, the medical case that still haunts me. The New York Times. Texas Democrat Republicans flip South Texas. Can a moderate Tejano singer take it back? The New York Times. Trump business actions. The Silicon Valley man in the White House is benefiting himself and his friends. The New York Times. Trump pardon. Trump frees fraudster just days in a 7-year prison sentence. The New York Times. Ukraine top Trump aides to meet with Ukrainians in Florida on Sunday. The New York Times. Utah RAWSEP View endangerment through risk while hiking. From the article headline: hiker rescued with his children faces abuse and torture charges. The New York Times. 9 headlines. The Guardian, November 30th, 2025. Ireland RAWSEP View alcoholic gatherings and pubs decline. From the article headline: Can you have a community without crack? Scholars of the pubs of Ireland warn of declining numbers. Ireland. The Guardian. Science and medicine. Does laziness start in the brain? Science and nature books. The Guardian. Trump family. All the millions of the president. How the Trumps are turning the presidency into riches. Donald Trump. The Guardian. Ukrainian naval drones strike 2 Russian oil tankers in Black Sea. Ukraine. The Guardian. Utah power surge law changes could soon bring balcony solar to millions across US News. The Guardian. Venezuela denounces colonialist threat as Trump orders airspace closed. Venezuela. The Guardian. Venezuela. Trump news at a glance. Venezuela suspends all deportation flights after Trump airspace closure warning. Trump administration. The Guardian.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Schoen Luft, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7 Natural Resources Defense Council nicknamed NRDC, 8 per county and Narzexwisisty, which means workshop for all beings in Polish, 9 Rachel Carson Council, 10 solutions for our climate nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.